Serious, Redditors who have lived in a haunted house, what are your most unexplainable paranormal experiences? My son, about 4 years old at the time, would jabber away in his room by himself. One day, my wife asked him who he was talking to. He said he was talking with Alice, and that she used to feed the men who lived there. He went on to say that she died because she couldn't breathe. Our house used to be a boarding house before World War II. When I was younger, I used to take naps upstairs. But by the time I was 8 years old I absolutely refused to go upstairs. The upstairs had 2 large closets. They ran from one side of the upstairs all the way to the other side on both sides. It was essentially a crawl space that was maybe 30 feet long. It started one day when a friend and I went crawling from one side to the other with flashlights like kids normally do. Then I saw a girl sitting there in the corner, acting like she wanted to play with us. I know a lot of people say when they see a ghost they aren't scared, just interested. Nope. I was beyond terrified. This girl looked normal, had blonde hair, a nice dress, and seemed friendly. I stayed silent, kept crawling behind my friend, and got out of the closet. I told him what I saw in there. He said he didn't see it, but felt like he didn't want to go back in. Then my parents would occasionally send me upstairs to get something. And when I would get up there I would see the doors swing open as if they were trying to get me to come inside. I would lose toys and wouldn't be able to find them anywhere. Suddenly my parents would be fishing out Christmas presents from the attic and we would find some of my toys in there. I remember being 8 years old. My parents are asleep still in the morning, and I leashed up my dog to go take on the monster in the attic. My dog, usually up for anything, refused to go off the top step into the attic. My parents never believed me with all the weird things that happened in that house. I would get blamed for things that happened all over the house. Leaving lights on, toys all over, things I knew I didn't do. Well, anyway we move out of there when I am 10. Not a week passes before the new owners call us up and ask if the house is haunted. Their daughter sleeps upstairs. They say that she has been playing with a blonde-haired girl at night. My parents laughed at how crazy these new homeowners must be. To make an already long story short, the girl started appearing in other parts of the house for them. They kept in contact with us. They would look over while watching TV and see the girl sitting on their daughter's lap, etc. They looked up on the computer the past owners of the house, found an old dressmaker that lived there, and yep, a picture of the little girl wearing one of the ladies' dresses. The family that moved in there were absolutely torn apart by the events. Got divorced. Dad stayed living in the house and ended up taking his own life in that house. I lived in one when I was a teen along with my parents. Several instances come to mind. We were remodeling an old farmhouse and had been there a couple of months before witnessing anything. One day I was underneath my truck, which was supported by only a jack. I was in the middle of working on it, with no good reason to get out at that moment. Suddenly, the overwhelming urge to get out from underneath overwhelmed me. No sooner than I got out, the truck fell to the ground. The jack had slipped. Freaked Dad out. He thought I was under it. When Mom got home, we mentioned it and she started crying. It turns out the previous owner died in the driveway, under a vehicle. In that spot, I would often see moving shadows and strangely hear music from the upstairs area. The windows of the old house were corked shut, and blackbirds would often get caught between the panes. We ended up replacing all the windows, but we had to break 3 inside panes to get them out. One of the more disturbing things happened when my mother was cooking breakfast. She turned away to get something out of the cabinet, and when she turned back around, all the forks set out were bent straight up. The forks were all bent. The fuck? Yay. Pretty much our reaction. The forks were laying on the counter, and the prongs of the forks were sticking straight up. By this time so much unexplained stuff happened in that house. It was unnerving, but not surprising. I always thought the birds getting stuck in the window was the creepiest though. There was no way those birds could have gotten in there, and the noise they made was eerie. I normally don't mention this to anyone, as most people are highly skeptical, as I would be. I do not miss that house. When I was 22 I was in the military and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It still took like a year after the diagnosis to separate from the military. But I went H9 on leave for the holidays about a month after the diagnosis. Anyone that has insulin-dependent diabetes typically carries around some sort of kit. Mine is black zip-up pouch and it has a glucometer, insulin pen, needles, and alcohol pads. Right after I left home to head back from leave, my mom texts me to ask if I'm missing my diabetic kit. I look, and I am not. She sends me a picture of a diabetic kit and asks if I know it. I've never seen this kit before in my life. Apparently, my sister went into her bedroom and discovered it outside of her window, propped up like someone had set it there. Oh. Also, her bedroom is on the second floor. Nobody else we know has diabetes. I lived in a house for about 5 years that was haunted. But not in a malicious way. In a shitty roommate kind of way. I'd come home to the windows on the second floor being open when it was raining, to food containers being open in the fridge that I hadn't touched yet. The worst was that the ghost hated clocks. She hated them. I had antique cuckoo clocks that had worked for 50 years that would just stop. Brand new wall clocks that ate through batteries like it was candy. My watch ended up on the floor one morning. The crystal shattered. Even though I knew I slept with it on. The one that pissed me off the most was that I got a brand new Kit Kat clock for Christmas and the bitch threw it off the wall. I was cooking and out of the corner of my eye, saw the cat freaking fly. Turned around. And it was across the kitchen. Broken. It was brand new. Man. She was a bitch. My uncle's house out on a very eastern part of NY was said to be haunted due to the family that used to own it in the 1800s. They decided not to give it to the stableman and sold it instead. He and the maid were said to have haunted the place. We always used to joke that you would hear people or things moving at night, but since the house is so old, we used to just laugh it off. My uncle's friend had her and her sister stay over the house one night. And the friend noticed a maid bringing towels down the stairs. When she woke, she saw the maid again, bringing what looked like a percolator down the stairs. She was so impressed by my uncle hiring staff. He is a neurologist in NYC, so he had a habit of spending a little bit extra. She went back to bed and woke up downstairs to see my uncle and his friend just chatting. She asked where the maid went and she thought that the maid was cooking breakfast. My uncle had no idea what she was talking about and asked what she looked like. The sister explained and he laughed. Walked her to the living room and pointed to an old picture. She said that was the woman. My uncle replied, "Yay. She has been dead for about 100 years. Edit. Percolator. My grandparents have a helpful ghost too. Their house was built in the 1860s. And they've lived in it since the late 1960s. Over the years, various family members have heard the vacuum cleaner turn on its own, and clothes and towels that were dropped on the floor before bed have been folded and placed at the foot of the bed by morning." In an immense burst of procrastination one day, I looked up every mention of their address in their town's online newspaper archives, and found out that the family that built the house had a daughter who grew up there, never married, and took care of her widowed father until she died of old age. So I figure the helpful ghost is just the daughter continuing to take care of people like she did for her entire life. That's kind of sweet. Yay. I don't mind sharing a house with ghosts as long as they're chill, friendly, and intend no harm at all. I'll just draw the line at breaking my shit and getting physical. Closest I've got to a haunted house is a haunted room. I used to sleep on the second floor, the bottom one being the first, and my sister in the attic. She used to have sleep paralysis often. Then she moved out and now I have her old room. She no longer has sleep paralysis, but I do. Similar experience. When I sleep in my old room, I have sleep paralysis 3 times a week. 3 levels of dreams. Like some Inception thing. Got married and moved out. Never experience it anymore. Our old neighbor once told me that before my parents bought our house, a bedridden family member of the previous owner died in where my old room is. When I was around 9 or 10 years old, I remember waking up to see a large shadow stood at the foot of my bed. I was living with my dad at the time. He has a very large terrace house built in the 1800s. Every so often there would be an unexplainable event happen. Such as footsteps when there's no one there or voices. On the night this happened, it was just my dad and I in the house. My sister was staying with my mom at the time. I woke up and noticed the door to my room was wide open. I normally sleep with it closed. I then became aware of a large, around 7 foot tall, shadow-like figure watching me from the end of the bed. When the figure noticed me, it seemed to melt into the floor and the door to my room slammed shut. Understandably, I was slightly traumatized by the whole experience. Asked my dad the next day if he was in my room, and he denied any knowledge of the event. He's not the type of person that likes jokes. I watched one of our cats being pulled backwards about 5 feet by her tail. She was walking through the dining area and suddenly was sliding backwards, as if someone was pulling her by her tail. Only there wasn't. She freaked out and tried to run, but couldn't immediately as something held on for a brief second before letting her go. I tend to think that was the handiwork of a 4 or 5-year-old ghost who hangs out and she just wanted to play with a kitty. This might get a little buried but I'll share anyway. So 2 weeks before we moved, my dad and I toured our house and I noticed this guy was painting the water heater, which I thought was weird AF but I was like 10 so whatever. Anyway, we moved in on a Wednesday and my parents let me stay home from school until the following Monday, and preoccupied me with coloring books and a new dollhouse in my brand new crayons pack. There literally wasn't a blue crayon, like it was a 64 pack, but there were only 63 crayons in it. One day, I went downstairs into the basement, and my blue crayon was next to the hot water heater, and scribbled on there it said, "Hi Fitness 6. From Kevin." I was so confused. I started school and my new classmates were like, "OMG. Do you live in Kevin's house? Your house is gonna be haunted." It turned out that Kevin was a little 8-year-old boy that lived in our house prior to us, and he got hit by a car in the front yard. He would write notes if you left out a pen and paper, open and close doors, adjust the thermostat, and always turn on Christmas music when it was that time of year. We had a swing set in the backyard, and even on the hottest, calmest days of summer, only the left swing would be moving back and forth. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Reddit After Dark. Have a good night.